Hello there, Atheist Junior here, your friend and humble narrator, and I'm back with another installment of my debate review series. And today I'm excited because I have a very special guest, one of my favorite new debaters of the recent crop of people who've been debating Kent is here with me today. Grayson, why don't you just introduce yourself for people who might not be familiar with you on my channel and just tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got started in doing these debates, I guess.
Yeah, hey everyone. I'm really grateful that you have me on here, AJ. I watched some of your previous breakdowns of Kent's debates and mine, and I really appreciate your presence in the community as well. Like you said, I am among the latest crop of debaters that have taken on Kent's Evolution Debate Challenge. And I had a lot of fun in our debates. I think we'll see that it was a pretty entertaining one. I have a passion for science, not just biology and evolution, but everything from the Big Bang cosmology to quantum physics. I love debunking pseudoscience. I've recently started my own YouTube channel, kind of hosting debates and after shows to debates is the general idea. It's called Based Theory, and just generally with an eye towards handling the pseudoscientific claims that creationists and other individuals proliferate, and just sort of dunking on them and showing why they're wrong and explaining and communicating what the actual science is.
Awesome. Yeah, so I made a community post kind of directing some of my audience to your channel because I want to try and help you sort of get started. Do you have anybody who you would consider like an influence or just that you like watching in this sort of community or science communicators?
So I started watching this kind of content probably over a decade ago, like when I was in middle school, and I just, I was actually raised in a like non-religious environment. I didn't actually realize that adults truly believed in religions until, yeah, probably shortly before middle school. So when I learned that, I kind of got very interested in a sort of the way that you look at a car accident on the side of the highway, and it was just very fascinating to me, like how these grown adults could believe these things. So I started watching like Kent Hovind and like several other creationists. Like I don't know if you remember Shock of God. It was way back in the day. He would make these videos rambling about atheists while he was driving his motorcycle, and I got really into watching those. And in terms of the atheists that I would enjoy watching, I like Aaron Ra was an early one, and also I don't know if he still does video content, but Thunderfoot was fairly big back in the day. So I've been sort of aware of this space for a number of years, but it wasn't until recently where I decided, you know what, Kent is getting on there in years, and I figured, kind of check that off the bucket list of being able to have said that I debated Kent Hovind while he was still, out of prison and active.
Yeah. So I have a limited amount of time for this video because I can never make it through these entire debates. They're just exhausting watching Kent. So I'm tackling this with a very specific strategy. So we're going to watch the first 25 minutes because it has some really good arguments from Grayson. And then we're going to skip ahead to the hour mark because Kent literally spends, I'm not very good at math, but however long that is, like 45 minutes almost, or half an hour,
35 minutes.
just 35 minutes straight, just gish galloping and killing time, talking about the geologic column, which is not the topic of the debate, just to avoid talking about mosaic fossils, which is what Grayson basically came into this debate wanting to talk about, which is a really good strategy. I always encourage people to go in with either 1 to 3 specific things that you want to talk about with Kent rather than like 18. Really narrow down and simplify what your focus is going to be because of this reason, because he's going to do whatever he can to control what you guys talk about. So it's really good that you had that focus. And so, yeah, not going to waste any more time, and we'll just get started. And it's going to be a little bit weird for me differentiating between current Grayson and past Grayson. So just, let me know when you want me to pause the video, and yeah.
Hosting after shows for like after.
See, that's gonna mess with me.
After some of these debates, if people in the comments want to continue the evolution and creation debate, anyone is welcome. I really love debating pseudoscience and creationism, so I'm open for any of that. I will be there after tonight's debate, and I'm also going to be trying to upload videos of debunking other kinds of pseudoscience as well, like climate change denial, flat Earth, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, stay tuned. Hopefully subscribe if you're interested in that kind of content. A little bit more about me. I am going to be bring forth after their kind. So in response to this, he said that mammals was just a word that we humans use to categorize these animals with, and that the animals don't care. But there's a very specific reason why mammals and eukaryotes and primates, etc., are all grouped together, even apart from their shared morphological characteristics. It's their DNA. So every single mammal species is more closely genetically related to all the other mammal species than they are to any species outside of the mammal branch. So the DNA is very clearly explaining.
Okay, let's stop.
Categorizations are not just arbitrary names that we assign.
Okay, let's stop right there. Appreciate it. Go ahead, Kent. You guys can have a little back and forth. Kent, have an uninterrupted.
Yeah, you already said something that's terribly false. Just because they have similar DNA does not mean they're related.
That's literally what it means.
And it's also a non sequitur to the point that I was making. That's why if we see, like, I don't even argue back at that. Like, obviously DNA is definitive proof of relationship, but that's not a battle that I figured was worth fighting, because my point still stands, like, without that. So I think I just changed my wording around and make the same point.
Yeah, it's a good strategy.
You chose to make them related. They don't think they're related. The cow doesn't think he's related to the bird at all. So, but to say they're related is incorrect. Okay, man has decided that the DNA code, if they look similar, we think they're related. I'm surrounded by...
Wrong. That was the first way that we classified animals as being related, was morphological similarities, before we knew about genetics. Because obviously animals that look very similar to each other, it's logical that they would be related. It wasn't until later on that we discovered genetics, because Darwin didn't even know what genetics was, that we realized we have to go back and correct a lot of these things. And a lot of the changes that were made were not intuitive. But he's mixing the two things up here, which is weird.
Probably 4,000 books in my library here, and they probably all have the same 26 letters of the alphabet. I'd bet all of them do. So what does that mean? That's the language with which you write English, okay?
That's the language with which you write English.
So you see, even with his own example, he's proving my point. As we could group these books into different languages, like these are the English books, these are the German books, these are the Turkish books, and that it would not be an arbitrary designation, which is my whole point about, like, just addressing the critique that he likes to bring up of saying, oh, these are just, arbitrary categories and the animals don't care what you call them. And, like, he's just making my point that it's not arbitrary, and there is a good reason for it.
But just that sentence doesn't make sense to me. That's the language that you write English with? Like, but English is a language. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. And this is such an annoying argument from Kent, because it's like his new favorite argument. Oh, the animals, they don't care. The animals don't care. No shit. That's totally irrelevant. But it's annoying because Kent literally says, like, I think it's criminal that you guys teach this stuff. It's like, but we've never seen a dog produce a non-dog because they're the same kind. But then he goes and says, human beings created this arbitrary classification system. And I asked him in my debate, I was like, is kind any less or more arbitrary than species? And he didn't answer my question, of course. But
Well,
it's
I
like,
think that he has to believe that kind is ordained by God, because
yeah.
kind is specified in the Bible, at least for like some animals. So that's why I didn't. I in the first debate we focused a lot on Ken's weird and faulty definition for kind, and we talked about genetics. That's why in this debate, just to kind of like explain to the audience what's going on right now, like I just addressed 2 points from our previous debate before I get into the main arguments about mosaic fossils and the order of the fossil record, which was sort of the main arguments. So it was just to preface, like, just a few points that I felt were important to address from the previous debate. This first one being, his point about the arbitrary nature of animal categorizations, which is my point, is that it's not arbitrary.
Yeah. Well, what I was saying though is that even kinds though, he says like, oh, the cows, they don't try to breed with the chickens. They know what kind they are. Like, because he can't actually give a good definition for kind. He can give examples, but he can't give a definition. And yet he says, oh, it's criminal that we teach kids that a dog produced a non-dog, but I can't even define what a kind is. So it's like, how are you making such a big deal out of this if you admit that your own definition is wishy-washy and totally like arbitrary, just as arbitrary as species? But it's like, we admit that species is an arbitrary classification and it can move around. It has moved, but that's the difference between Kent's one thing of kind and the fact that we have a Linnaean classification where you have a sliding scale of different categories. There's no order, class, genus categories for kind. It's just kind and like sort.
I actually, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, because I had considered bringing up the fact that in the Bible, like, it only discusses like maybe 4 or 5 different kinds, but one of them is like the beast kind,
Yeah.
and one of them is the crawling kind. And I'm like,
Creeping kind.
have you watched debates where people have brought this up? Like, I didn't know what Kent's response would be, and I ultimately determined it would probably be a waste of our time, so I didn't bring it up. But I'm still like, what does Kent think that the crawling kind is?
Yeah, I can actually recommend you some videos, not debates, but Whack and Atheist videos, where Professor Dave and Aaron Ra have brought up the beast kind and creeping kind, respectively, and Kent does not have a good response for it at all because he completely misses the point. And just wanted to say thank you to Valkyrie Vision for the $4.99 super sticker, and also Dr. Osiris. But I'm going to stop. I'm going to try not to pause too much because I got a comment the other day that said that I think it said I was annoying as fuck and I paused too much or something like that. I deleted it. Fuck that guy.
So the fact that they have similar DNA code does not mean they're related. In your mind, I know you've been taught they are, but no, it shows no relationship between the elephant and the cow and the bird, just because they have similar DNA code. So I completely object to that first statement. You are incorrect. You may believe that if you'd like, but that is a religious statement you just made, not scientific.
Okay, so apart from the fact that like DNA does demonstrate relationship, I'm fine with just changing the word choice, and I'll just say that every mammal species has more similar DNA to all the other mammal species than they do to any non-mammal species. So I won't use the word related. I'll just say that the DNA sequence is more similar to, and that still explains why these are not just, arbitrarily assigned names. There's actually DNA similarities that make these kinds of categorizations. Oh, I can't hear you, AJ. You might be on mute.
My bad. I was muted. for $2 from Exist Dissolve, it says Kent is the creep kind. So
That's great.
that's a good one. All right, nobody make fun of my giant soda. It's the only one they had at the store.
But I don't want to get too bogged down on something like that. I mean, if I can, I'll move on to another topic that's similar. It's speaking of DNA. It's from the last debate, and then we'll get to the main fossil record kind of arguments. If you're okay
I guess
with
what we could do, I did see Kent. I saw you put your finger up. So if there's something you wanted to respond to, feel free to do so. And then Grayson, we can allow you to move on to the next point.
Yeah, he's already stuck in the box that because there are similarities, there's a historical relationship where one descended from the other, etc. If there were not similarities between the different animals and similar proteins, etc., we could only eat each other. But the fact that the brown cow can eat the green grass and give the white milk and churn it and get yellow butter, and I eat it and get blonde hair, that's proof of a designer. But you're looking at those similarities as
How? That's just a stupid catchphrase that you insist on saying. It does not prove a common designer.
But you see, AJ, everything is designed to eat the other creatures. So how could that be anything other than design?
Yeah, I mean, animals that are different from each other don't eat each other. That never happens, you know?
The actual interesting point with this is that there are foods which are designed, right? They're made by humans. And we have foods that do not derive from any like animal or plant products. Like they're synthetic foods, you know? And like, so we do have example of foods that are designed and they're not like biologically based. So it kind of is a self-defeater.
Yeah, and he's saying that if we were not genetically similar, or if our DNA was not similar, we could. Did he say we could only eat each other, or?
He said that if our DNA was not similar, we wouldn't be able to eat each other.
What about the bacteria, the E. coli that, or the bacteria that was able to eat citrate or nylon? That's not similar. That's like eating plastic.
Yeah, that's another great point. I mean, where does nylon come from? Definitely not an organic, source. It's a synthetic chemist.
as proof of relationship, and it's no such thing. I'd look at the same evidence, see the same thing, and say, wow, that's pretty cool the way that's designed. General Motors makes all kinds of different vehicles, and I'd be willing to bet thousands of the parts are interchangeable. I bet the lug nuts on a Chevy pickup truck will work on a Chevy car. So what does that prove? In your mind, it proves relationship. In my mind, it proves common designer. So we're already strike one. Okay, I don't think that's evidence, but I think you've been taught that for so long, you're probably stuck in that rut.
I mean, human beings can't share blood with each other if they don't have a specific blood type. What's your point? Bone marrow can't be transferred unless it matches really specifically, and that's not even going to like a different species like chimps or as Kent would say, orangutans. If Gutsick Gibbon Erica taught me that if you ever hear a creationist or anybody say the word orangutan and they pronounce it with a G at the end, that means they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And that has proved very, very helpful.
Well, it's the exact same thing with the law of thermodynamics. I get that all the time. I'm like, it's thermodynamics. Like that, it's like as soon as I hear thermal dynamics, I already know what argument they're gonna make.
Yeah. Jeez.
I'll help you out. Yes, there are similarities. Does not mean anything as far as relationship. Nothing. Go ahead.
Okay, so this point actually segues perfectly to the next point that I was going to make.
See, now I'm just imagining Hovind riding a Segway.
Which was that in our last debate, I specifically
Hovind coming through. Hovind.
brought up this notion of DNA similarities proving either common design or common ancestry. So just to briefly touch on the metaphor with the car parts and the books, I feel like this breaks down, as for reasons I touched in the last debate, that cars and books don't have any relationships of any kind. There's no father or mother book or car. There's no relationship at all between these things. The only things that actually can have familial relationships are living things with DNA. But the point I wanted to bring up about the common design versus common ancestry is that, and I don't think that Kent addressed this in our previous.
He's 100% not listening right now. Kent is not listening.
I
He's
want to
texting.
believe in my heart. I want to be optimistic. I want to believe that he's taking notes.
Okay, he's definitely not texting Sandra.
This debate, that's why I wanted to bring it up now, is that when we use the common design hypothesis to make predictions about DNA similarities, right? Because if your explanation for DNA similarities is common design, then we should be able to use common design to make predictions about DNA similarities. So, but when we do this, these predictions fail. So my example for this, and in that evolution does make successful predictions of DNA similarities, would be
oh, this part is so good. This is probably one of the best exchanges, or like one of the biggest points that I would score for you in the debate right here. Is definitely
Kent. There's a question for you. So based on your creation model, should we expect a goldfish's DNA to be more similar to a shark's or to a human's? And why? Like, what's your reasoning for why common design would be able to allow you to make that prediction?
I wouldn't make any prediction in that at all. I don't think that's a silly way to even take the argument. All we've ever observed is sharks produce baby sharks, goldfish produce baby goldfish, humans produce baby humans. You talk about ancestry, that's ancestry. We've seen the ancestry of bacteria for thousands of generations, and they never produce anything but a bacteria. Never. We've seen the ancestry of dogs for probably thousands of generations, and they always make dogs. So all scientific evidence from ancestry says dogs produce dogs and nothing else ever. Now, if you wish to imagine, SpongeBob style, that if you went back billions of years, it was something else, that's outside of science. I wish you could see that. So I would not make any prediction about the DNA of goldfish or sharks. I don't care. The shark.
Kent doesn't care. Clearly, no shit, he doesn't care.
Yeah, he's just admitting that his model does not have any predictive power.
Yeah, he literally just said, "Oh, I don't care. I don't give a shit. You think I take these debates seriously?" No, I'm not even wearing pants.
Are different than goldfish in hundreds of ways, but it doesn't matter how similar the DNA is. I can pick two books off my shelf and probably find whole sentences that are nearly identical by totally different authors. That's just the way we speak in English.
Yeah, totally different authors. Similarities with totally different designers. Interesting, Kent, that you would mention that. Doesn't that go against his point? I mean, when I debated him the second time, or no, I think it was the first time, he had brought up his car analogy, of course, and I think he brought it up later, and he was talking about GMC and Chevy, or GMC and Honda, and I told him, I was like, you said that GMC and Honda both have similar design in their like rims or whatever. And he's like, oh yeah. And I'm like, yeah, but those are not the same designer. That's not a common designer, but they have similarities. And he's like, oh, okay. Or I told him it's not a good analogy. And he's just like, okay. And I think you got him to do that a couple times here, or like the equivalent of that. And that's what I consider, because you're never going to get Kent to admit that he was like wrong, or like that you were right. But if you get him to just say like, oh, okay, or just like move on, that means that like you won that exchange and you score a point for that one. That's how I score these debates anyway. And you definitely got several of those. So this was a really good performance. So I think you should definitely be really happy with this performance.
Nothing to do with ancestry. Observable science for ancestry says dogs produce dogs, never an exception. Never.
So
Anything
do
other
you,
than
do you
that,
understand my my logic about saying that if you're going to use common design as an explanation to explain why certain species have genetic similarities between each other, and if your answer for that is common design between them, then logically we should be able to use common design to predict which species should have more genetic similarities than other species. Does that make sense logically to you?
I understand what you're saying. I disagree completely. I don't think it shows any prediction at all. I think some great inventors of the past have produced some wildly different inventions. Galileo produced some amazing things, and different people have make one invention, then they get a wild idea in a totally different area, make another. It's the same guy designing them, but they're
What?
Yeah, he's just completely evading because he knows that whenever someone brings up evidence showing like, hey, there's a nested hierarchical pattern of DNA similarities across all living species, he said, oh, well, that's because they have a common designer. And then when you say, oh, okay, like their common designs like are the reason why that they're similar, so then shouldn't we be able to use common design to predict similarities? He said, oh no, why would you think that? That's stupid.
Don't even take the argument that way. I don't want to have to answer that. I don't care. Yeah, this is what I got.
The logic only flows in one direction. It doesn't go back, and it doesn't make predictions. So that would be a step too far.
Yeah, like this is why I got so annoyed in my last debate with Kent when I asked him if I can't see mountains forming in my lifetime or human lifetime, does that mean that mountains don't form or aren't forming right now? And he wouldn't answer it because he said, oh, well, that's not a living organism. I'm just like, dude, you constantly give these analogies to things that aren't living, but like I'm not allowed to do it.
So the analogy that I've been trying to think of that is like a very similar strain to what you're saying is like whenever all these creationists bring up like, why can't we see macroevolution today, blah 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 blah, because obviously they change the definition of macroevolution. They don't accept speciation as macroevolution. But besides the point, my definition is like my analogy is like that's like asking, well, can you prove that all 4 seasons happen today? Like, can you show, like, how do you know that winter exists if you can't prove it on a summer day? Like, it's like, well, how can you prove that all 4 seasons exist in one year if you can't show it in one day? Like, that's what they're asking, basically.
Oh, well, I could do that. I just go to the Four Seasons Hotel and I can stay there in one day, So I think I've won the debate, Grayson. So, just go, jump out a window.
Now, is this the Four Seasons hotel, or is this the Four Seasons that the Trump rally was hosted in? Four Seasons landscaping.
It's the Four Hovinds. It's like the 7th circle of hell, but it's the Four Hovinds.
They're vastly different. I think God designed creatures just to make us say, wow, you're really smart, God. But in your mind, you think because there are similarities, therefore there's a relationship, and that's where there is just no such thing.
No, evolutionary biologists think that. And it's not just that somebody thinks that. You can feed the data into a computer, and it's going to print out these same trees of life.
Well, he also agrees that similar DNA is definitive proof of a relationship between humans. Like, he accepts that, no problem. That's foolproof evidence for a relationship. It's just for some reason, when it's between species, then it's not common ancestry. Then it has to be common design, except it can't be common design because common design fails in all of its predictions. So,
yeah. So I hate to keep referencing my debate, but I asked Kent this question, and if you debate him again, you're free to take this one. But I asked him, and I like to make my questions with Kent personal sometimes because it pisses him off. And I told him like that you have a son and daughter named Kent, Andrew, and Marlissa, and they have DNA similarities. They have similarities in their genome structure. And I asked him, is that proof that they have a common ancestor? And he just completely like danced around the question and just said, yeah, they're human. They're both human, and their grandpa was human, and their great grandpa was human. He's like, I noticed this, that he's so desperate for somebody to make an argument that evolution means that a human is going to like give birth to a non-human. Nobody ever makes that argument, but have you noticed this, that he's constantly like, yeah, they're all human, and the grandparents are human. I would bet you $5 that your parents were human or some shit like that. It's like, if you're
Well,
so
the
sure that,
hypocrisy is that on the one hand, he wants to say that these designations are arbitrary and meaningless, but at the same time, he falls back on these designations where, no matter how much variation you get, they're all still human. They're all still dog. It's like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Either these designations are arbitrary or they're not.
yeah, exactly.
There are similarities between a dog and a grizzly bear. They both have hair on the outside.
I feel like Kent messed up right here. I've never heard, because he never picks two animals that are this close together, and I was like overjoyed when I actually heard this, because I was like, yeah, dog and bear. Okay, I can work with that.
They both have a nose on the front.
They're both mammals.
They both have feet. So what? And see,
they're both warm-blooded. They're both chordates. They both have 4 legs. They both are eukaryotic. They both have eukaryotic cells. They're both were born from a placenta, and their mothers give milk. They have more DNA similarities than a mammal and a lizard do.
in your mind, you've been taught to believe that's proof years ago they had a common ancestor. I think they have feet because they need to walk, and they have a nose on the front because they need to smell, and they have hair because they need to stay warm. It's a great design. And there are thousands of differences, but it wouldn't matter. Comparing similarities of the physical features or the habits or the DNA structure is a completely meaningless rabbit trail to go down. All we've observed is dogs produce dogs. That's all.
Don't worry. We're going to get to dogs and bears later on. Okay. So just hold on to that idea.
I'm not worried at all.
So my main point was just that if we look at a goldfish and a shark, we can very clearly see that they are more common in design than a goldfish is to a human. But evolution would predict that because humans evolved from the group of fishes that had bones, and that sharks branched off from fishes before the evolution of bones, then the evolution prediction would be that fish and humans share a common ancestor later on than goldfish and sharks.
So we have a $2 super chat from Creationist Crybaby. It just says love to AJ and Grayson. So thank you to Creationist Crybaby. And I feel like right here, I could be wrong, but I feel like you were maybe struggling a little bit to explain this, which is definitely, something that happens in these debates. But kudos for sticking with the question, though. You know what I mean? That's the hard part, though, is keeping that question fresh in your mind as he's gish galloping and asking you other things. And so you're having to multitask and respond to the things he's saying, but keeping the question in the back of your head, like, I'm going to ask this later. So when you have to come back and give that argument again, it can be really difficult. I think that maybe that's what happened here, which is by design from Kent. Design, I don't know. I don't know if I can't speak for you, but that definitely happened to me when I debated him.
And thus, human DNA should be more similar to a goldfish than a goldfish is similar to a shark. And when we actually check to see which DNA is more similar to the other one, we find the evolution prediction vindicated. So that was my point with that.
You don't find it vindicated. You find that because you imagine they have a common ancestor at all, this is one bit of evidence that you think supports that theory. But observation says goldfish only produce goldfish. Any exceptions? Has anybody ever seen a goldfish turn to a
bit of evidence that supports the theory? I mean, he had to couch it in all these kinds of like this language of, oh, you think it's evidence, but
yeah, it's like he didn't even finish his sentence. Like, because you think this, like, well, no, and then he just repeats himself. He just repeats himself again and again and again. Like, oh, well, X produces X. Okay, well, we heard you the fucking first time, Kent.
A human, because you're claiming because we have bones, goldfish and humans are related. That's ridiculous. Goldfish only make baby goldfish.
Not what you said.
No exceptions. So that is imagination. You left science about halfway through your description. It's true. We might have more similarities because of the way somebody counted them. I mean, there's how many billions of DNA lines of code? You can count them in all cards. How many lines of code have to go wrong to make your computer stop working?
What? What does that even mean? What is the relevance of that?
Yeah, like we have high throughput genetic sequencing technology. It's not like somebody's actually physically counting these things. It's a computer. So
how many lines of code have to go wrong? Like it's not the code that goes wrong, like that causes something to go wrong in a computer. It's like a program being executed. It's not the code that was written, unless it's like really, I don't even know. I'm not even going to answer that. It was just so stupid. It's like he summoned LPP out of nowhere right there. Or channeled LPP. The DNA is a computer code.
So you see how I can just use your argument against you on that when you say like that they're all, no matter how many varieties that like the goldfish can differentiate into, it's always still just a goldfish. But your argument is also that these are just arbitrary names that we give to the animals and that the animals don't really care. So I can point to the fact that every single generation of goldfish is slightly different than their parents. And every generation, those differences continue to add up to where, a goldfish that's separated from another by 100 generations is going to be much more different than a goldfish by one generation. And a goldfish 1,000 generations apart is going to be even more different. And you can't just say, but they're all still goldfish, because that's just in your own arguments. Those are just arbitrary names that we give them that they don't really care about.
Okay. First of all, I agree that each generation may have slight differences. I disagree that.
Okay. I give you big props here for getting Kent to agree to that and sticking with your question. Like, you're really not giving up on it. And that's what I love to see. You know what I mean? So I give you a lot of credit for that. Because you just can't, because Kent has all the patience in the world. He will continue to not answer over and over again. And your confidence in this debate is really inspiring to see. So that's really why I enjoyed watching this. Like, when you told Kent, like, don't worry, we're going to get to the dogs and the bears. And he's like, oh, I'm not worried. You're like, yeah. Good stuff.
You say these differences add up. They do not. Nobody's ever seen that. They've created differences in dogs where they decided to select a certain trait, like, small and stupid, so you get a pug like my wife's dog, or large and, you can get a variety of dogs. But they don't.
He hates his wife's dog so much. He absolutely hates that dog. It's so funny.
I can't imagine, like, and she probably thinks that these jokes are hilarious too. She's that type of person. But if I had like a significant other who insulted my dog, I would be like, you can pack your shit and move out. You're not going to talk about my dog that way. Like, when I have had a dog, you treat it as a member of the family. Like, you take it to the vet when it gets sick. You cry when it dies, or when you have to, when you see it get hurt. And, getting a puppy is like, it's not the same thing as like having a child, but it's like you really care about it. But Kent has no empathy, so he doesn't like dogs. He only sees them, the only value he sees in dogs is their function. So the only function a dog can have is that if it's big, it can be a guard dog to guard the expensive things that you own that other people paid for, like all the ATVs and Forerunners that are broken that Ken has. I have a video on my channel called Ken Hovind Hates Dogs that, oh man, That's a fucked up video. Oh my god. And he hates chihuahuas. He hates any little dog. You know what I mean? I don't even want to get into this topic because I'm going to get on my soapbox and I'm going to get mad.
Accumulate like you imagine. They changes happen, and there's just as likely to change right back in the next generation. It's not like it made a change and kept getting improvements. They're not adding up. They're changing within limits. They've been trying to get bigger dogs for a long time. They now have as big as the Mastiff. They're 3'8", I think, is the biggest. Well, why don't they get a dog as big as a giraffe? There are animals as big.
Because dogs are domesticated. They are pets. If you had a giraffe-sized dog, it wouldn't fit in someone's house. Like, this is just a stupid question. It's just what? So dumb.
Big as a giraffe, like a giraffe. So they've been trying for bigger dogs. Who knows why, but they don't add up. You can't just keep adding them up. Somebody taught you that. You need to get your money back for that part of your education.
I hate to keep pausing it, but if you can't get your money back for going to college, if you like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't.
Yeah, you taught me about evolution, so I'd like a refund, please.
Yeah, like you can't. You pay the tuition. That's it. You can't say, "Oh, my education wasn't very good. I'd like my money back." Like, that's not how it works.
Plus, I mean, I didn't want to bring this up, but I mean, like, I didn't pay for my education. Like, I got scholarships. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't pay anything. So, I it's not relevant, but I just like his point is totally irrelevant. And like, he's just saying that you can't observe these changes adding up over generations, which is like objectively false. Like, anyone can observe this.
Yeah, it's like I thought you were a math teacher, Kent.
I disagree. They don't add up. I agree there's changes. The changes have limits. There are 400 varieties of cows.
We can observe, test, and demonstrate that these changes add up. All we would need to do is compare the DNA over generations. So we can, we can compare the DNA at generation 1, and then generation 2, and then generation 100, and generation 1,000, and we can see that the differences between generation 1 and generation 2 are much smaller than the differences between generation 1 and 100 or 1 and 1,000. Like, we can actually see this empirically and measure it. We just have to look at the DNA. Like, ancient DNA for humans also is demonstrable of this.
Well, I agree that there are variations, but they don't add up. I don't know how you got that. They have tried for years.
See, Kent is scrambling now.
Yeah, when he's going through his slides really quickly, that
Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, he just is claiming that these things don't add up. But like, what's the mechanism for that? Why wouldn't they add up? It makes no sense.
Yeah. So,
he also sorry to cut you off, but he also is a proponent of genetic entropy.
Yeah.
Which the entire principle of genetic entropy is that the changes between generations adds up over time, detrimentally in the case of genetic entropy. But like, it is a tenet of his own belief system that these changes do add up over time. So I don't know why he feels he has to just claim that they can't add up because of reasons.
Well, it's because Kent is a contrarian and he has to disagree with whatever the debate opponent is saying, even if he can't do that logically. And I really like, in this debate, how you're analyzing his arguments, because that's always what I've tried to do. And what I encourage people to do is because you can't, if you go in and tell Kent, here, I have 10 slides about the specifics of why DNA similarities prove common ancestry. He's just going to be like, no, that's wrong. So you're not really going to get anywhere doing that. I think it's a lot more effective to analyze his arguments and show the flaws in it and make him explain his own bullshit, because he never wants to defend creationism. But if you can attack his arguments about evolution, that is such a good strategy.
Well, I hope that we can get to the part where I bring up plankton, because that's exactly, like, I know the argument that he's going to make, and I perfectly refute it with an example of plankton. And he literally he just is on his phone trying to Google it like during the debate. And it's like, well, if my reception was better, I would have won.
Yeah, well, we've got about 5 minutes in this section, so I'm gonna let it play for a little while, and then we'll skip ahead to the hour mark. But yeah, I'm gonna try not to pause for a little while.
Years to get varieties of dogs. I'm showing some here. There are now 339 recognized breeds of dogs. Show me the evidence. Science deals with what we can observe, study, and test. Show me the science that would make you think a dog came from anything that was a non-dog millions of years ago. All we've seen is, and you get a new generation, every year, sometimes twice a year. Where's the evidence of it ever being a non-dog? There's pictures from thousands of years ago, people having dogs. They're still dogs.
Well, a wolf is a non-dog.
Well, dog, wolf, and coyote can all interbreed. Now, we've decided to put wolf in a different category. We call it a different kind. But no, they crossbreed them all the time. Let's see.
There are some kinds of wolves that cannot interbreed, like the maned wolf cannot interbreed with dogs. But it can interbreed with other kinds of canines.
So because these, and that's enough evidence to make you think a dog and a ladybug have a common ancestor?
No, that's enough evidence to make me think that a wolf is a non-dog.
That's my favorite line in this debate. I love that. Oh boy.
Well, he's always moving the goalposts, and you just have to you'll say, this is evidence for X, and he says, oh, you think that's evidence for Y?
Exactly.
Like, no.
It's more like this is evidence for A is evidence for B, and he's like, oh, so you think because A is evidence for B that's evidence for Z? No. Asshole. That's not what I said. And he accuses you of making leaps of logic, but he's the one making these giant leaps. It's so annoying.
But we can move on to the fossil record, as that's kind of the main focus tonight.
Well,
Kent, you can add on.
And one more point on that. The last thing you said about wolves are non-dogs. Man is deciding all this classification stuff. The wolf doesn't care. Turn all the wolves loose. They go seek for another wolf to mate with, okay? And if they can't find one, they'll take a dog. There are coy wolves. There's a combination of a wolf and a coyote. Coy dog, a coyote and dog. The wolves, dogs, and coyotes can all interbreed. They normally don't, but they can. But they're so obviously, a 4-year-old will tell you that's the same kind of animal. Put all those dogs next to a banana or a ladybug, and they'll say, oh, those ladybug, they're different. So you're imagining that these little variations we see can somehow add up to these stupid family trees that they make. And it's just, I don't understand. There is no scientific evidence of any dog producing a non-dog, or what a 4-year-old would recognize as the same kind. But again, it's our classification. We're imposing this on them. They don't care. They know what their kind is, and they go seek their kind.
So I would say that there is scientific evidence that dogs came from wolves, which are non-dogs. And I think that lots of 4-year-olds would have difficulty if they were seeing a Chihuahua, a pug, and a wolf in comparison. I would assume that some of them would have difficulty thinking that they're all the same animal, just like maybe if you brought a Chihuahua back to prehistoric man and said, hey, this is the exact same kind of animal as a wolf. I would think that many of them would just not believe you.
Well, they may not see that. They may not. If they would not believe the dog and the wolf have a common ancestor, why on earth should we believe a dog and a banana have a common ancestor? Like you.
What?
Yeah. So he's saying, like, if a prehistoric man wouldn't believe in dog evolution from wolves, then why should we believe evolution? Because if it doesn't make sense to a caveman, clearly it can't be true.
Like, this was your argument, Kent. This is your argument. And a fucking banana is not a living organism. Kent got mad at me for bringing this up in the debate. But it's a banana tree. A banana is not a living organism. It's the fruiting body of a plant or a tree. But he always is like, well, you know, he specifically uses that example: dog, wolf, coyote, and a banana. That just shows how dishonest he is. Because it's not, you know, it's not alive.
Also, the
part
fun
of the
thing about
organism.
bananas is that I don't think that they pass the 4-year-old test. Like if you were to show a 4-year-old a wild, non-domesticated banana and then a domesticated banana and ask are they the same, like most 4-year-olds would say no, they're obviously different.
Yeah, I said banana plant or tree, so I win.
You believe.
Because of their genetic similarities. But
Oh.
I want to focus tonight not on
God, it's so annoying when the fucking laugh track is going. This is why, if I ever debated Kent again, which I won't, I would want to come with like a laugh track button so I can, after my own jokes, I can have a laugh track just to even the scales, you know.
He's like, you think genetic similarities show relationship? Ha 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 ha. It's like, yes, obviously.
Yeah, it's like you think you're related to an animal or a fruit. It's like, yeah. So what? It's like I got Professor Dave to admit he was related to a strawberry. It's like it's not admitting anything. Admitting implies that he's saying something you don't want to say. Okay, so we have a super chat from David Durenzio for $1.99. It says banana stares in Ray Comfort. That's good. Very good reference. Oh, tall plants. Well, that's a good compromise. I thought there was another one that I missed. Another super chat. Thank you to the people sending super chats. I really appreciate it. I'm enjoying this.
On genetics, as that was a topic from last debate, and I want to focus on the fossil record. So if you're okay to move on to that portion of the...
I think we can skip ahead now because we're right at like
the main topic of the debate was supposed to be the fossil record, but it becomes such a mess as soon as I mention like when we dig down into the earth there are layers, and it's just like it just derails into like a 45-minute conversation about layers and do they come from space and like all this craziness. And like eventually, like, you know, I make the points about mosaic fossils. I still think that that is an extremely strong line of evidence for evolution, but I then go on to the order that we see fossils sorting out in the layers of the stratigraphic record. And that, so those are my two main thrusts of evidence for the main point of the debate.
Yeah, so I skipped ahead to the hour mark. I'm gonna let this play. I'm gonna go use the restroom, and I'll be right back.
Evidence-based science should be taught in a classroom.
I agree.
But
The evidence shows us dogs produce dogs. That's the evidence. The evidence shows us there are limits. You may get a big dog or a little dog, but there are limits.
well,
So
the limits that you point out are just limits in the laws of physics and anatomy. I don't see how evolution breaks any laws of physics.
Well, if it went from a single cell to an elephant, they broke the limit there, didn't it?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, each single cell of your body, you probably have 100 trillion of them. Each one of those cells has about 100 trillion atoms, all arranged precisely. And each one of those cells is more complicated than the space shuttle. And the DNA code in one of your cells is more complex than the computer system of the world.
Mm-hmm.
It is dreaming to think this happened by chance.
Well, I don't say that it happened by chance, obviously. I mean, there are guiding processes such as natural selection. It's not just chance. But I will say that complexity of it in it of itself is not a very good gauge to see if something was designed or not. Typically, when we know that things are designed, like a pen or whatever example you have, it's because we have evidence of these things being designed. Now, with humans and DNA, we have evidence of not design. For example, if you have children, right, then your children's DNA is going to be a totally new code from either you or your partner that their specific DNA code is never going to have existed before. And yet it's way more complicated than a space shuttle, like you said. And yet it didn't require anyone to design it. right? It's a result of genetic recombination and natural processes, and yet it's so much more complicated than all of these other things. So the reason why we think that things are designed is we have evidence that they're designed, and in the case of genetics and human reproduction, we actually have evidence that it can occur completely without design, and you can get totally new DNA sequences without any design input from a designer.
Well, that's like saying we can dump letters of the alphabet out and write books. The letters themselves are designed. I'll give you that. I'll give you a truckload of just letters of the alphabet. Dump them out. Try to get a book. Try to get a sentence that makes any sense. It just won't happen. The design in your cell is way more than you're giving credit for here. So if the fact that a sperm and an egg can get together and make a baby, each one of those, the sperm and the egg, are mind-boggling in their complexity. And the fact that they can get together and the code line up and the DNA unwind and join back together again is stunning. I don't have a problem just praising God for, wow, that's amazing, God, thank you. I'm glad you made it that way, and I'm glad you made it so fun to do that, to admit it that way. So that's the way he did it.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I think I want to move on back to the fossil record. So
gross, Kent. Why does he have to insert his weird sex jokes? Did you catch that?
It's just boomer humor.
It's not okay. I'm offended. I feel sexually assaulted right now.
We were just talking about mosaic fossils. So with creation, right, we should expect to find mosaic fossils for animals sharing characteristics between two separate kinds that evolution would say are distantly related, right? We should expect to find those examples if evolution is not true and creation is true. So, for example, we never find any dolphin shark mosaics or dog monkey mosaics or lobster scorpions or kangaroo mammoths or any examples other than the
man bear pig. Left that one out.
Evolutionary predictions. So the evolutionary predictions, for example, like mosaics of dinosaurs and birds, or mammals and synapsids, whales and hooved land animals, humans and chimpanzee-like apes. So we find all of these fossils in the fossil record, and they're ordered into layers corresponding to the layers of different types of rocks. So kind of just about the...
Yeah, Ken Hovind has never played Boggle, apparently. Because
I've never played Boggle either. I have to admit.
Have you ever seen King of the Hill?
Yeah, some episodes, but
well, Boggle, it's a game where you have a plastic like container, like a little plastic cube, and there's letters on the inside, and you shake it up, and then you set it down, and then you play against somebody where you have to write down as many words as you can find from the letters. I think that they have to connect, like going vertically or horizontally, but that's a random shuffling of letters that you can get words from. Maybe not like a book or sentences, but that's chaotic randomness that is going to produce some order based on the set of rules that is the alphabet and the words that we have in the English language. So, and
until
exactly
you can show me a monkey, until you can show me a monkey typing Shakespeare, then you can't prove evolution.
Yeah, I think they tried that, and the monkeys just shit on the typewriters. But that's more of like a thought experiment rather than something you could actually do in real life.
I mean, there are plenty of authors and screenwriters that I can also name that have basically just shit on their keyboards.
Yeah, pretty much.
Order that we were talking about before. Sure.
Okay. You are claiming tonight, if I heard you right, that there are mosaic fossils showing that dinosaurs and birds are related.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming you're thinking of Archaeopteryx or something like that.
That's a good example, sure.
Okay, you understand that birds are warm-blooded, reptiles are cold-blooded. There's a vast difference there.
And dinosaurs are warm-blooded.
Dinosaurs.
I love this part. I love this part so much.
Dinosaurs were warm-blooded?
Yes.
How do you know that?
How do you know they were cold-blooded, asshole? Like, good. You were really prepared for this question, though. So
I wasn't at all. Like I just I did not expect this subject to get brought up. I just had to pull on some background knowledge and just try to remember what I've read previously.
see, well, that's part of being prepared is that prior research, because you can never predict. As predictable as Hovind is, you can never predict everything that's going to come up in a debate because he likes to throw out wild cards.
We have fossil evidence to suggest that they're warm-blooded based on their body plans and the way that their bodies were shaped. Is not really viable to have a cold-blooded animal with those kinds of body plans. And we also have evidence from like their like blood capillary structures that we have found in the fossil record.
So is the argument here sort of that if reptiles are cold-blooded and they get some of their body warmth by sunbathing, and they want to expose as much surface area of their skin and their bodies to the sun as possible, when you have organisms that are as huge as dinosaurs, that there's no way that would be viable if they were cold-blooded, or
yeah, like you would have like anatomical features for like cold-blooded creatures like that you would not see in warm-blooded animals, or like the proportions of their like anatomy, like it's the actual like shape and morphology and what kind of features they have that like are distinctly like wouldn't work very well for a cold-blooded organism. Like it's about their metabolic rates, and there's also other features. Like he harps on the warm-blooded versus cold-blooded, but there's also like the fact that dinosaurs had bird-style lungs.
yeah.
And we have fossil evidence for that, and they have hollow bones just like birds. Like there are numerous mosaic attributes between dinosaur and bird evolution that show the similarities between the two. So we have plenty of evidence that they are warm-blooded.
I'd have to see that. That'd have to be proven to me. Okay, let's take the hoofed animal and the whale.
Sure.
Would you agree that whales don't have hooves?
I would, yes.
Okay. So what is the transition animal between the whale and the cow?
Got to get that insulting question in there, Got to get that in there.
Well, there wouldn't be a transition.
See, Ken thinks there has to be, if there's a common ancestor between a whale and a artiodactyl or an ungulate, or a cow, that it has to be like Free Willy with hooves, Like he thinks that's what common ancestor means.
Yeah, like if there's a common ancestor between two things, he expects there to be like a transition from a modern cow to a modern whale.
Yeah, exactly. That's why he says, if the kissed a frog and turned into a prince, that's a fairy tale. But if it turns slowly, that's modern science. It's like, well, no, humans didn't evolve from modern frogs. We've coexisted. Asshole.
Between a whale and a cow, the hooved animal that evolved into whales was much smaller, and kind of like it almost kind of resembles like a larger like shrew or like rodent, but it had hooves. We actually find the fossils of this. I think it's like it's the ancestor of Pakicetus. I don't remember the exact.
What do you mean we? You mean you found these fossils, Grayson?
Yeah.
You dug
I want
it up?
to clarify that I was talking about Indohyus, I think is the name of the. I didn't remember it at the time, though.
Did you dig it up? Did you dig it up personally?
Yeah, I have personally dug up every fossil.
Did you dig up the dead bodies in my backyard?
I was personally there for the Big Bang as a witness.
Yeah.
Scientific name for it now, but we find whales that then have 4 limbs, like Basilosaurus, and so we actually see them losing their hind limbs up to the modern day in the fossil record. through these mosaic forms.
No, why is a bone in the dirt able to do this, but no animal today can do this? This is not science. What we observe today is dogs produce dogs, whales produce whales, but you're imagining that a bone you found in the dirt that you think you can put between the two is the ancestor or the change from one to the other. Do it again. Let's take a hoofed animal and turn it to a whale again. Or let's take a reptile, or let's take a dinosaur, or let's take any kind of lizard and turn it into a bird. It just doesn't happen. That's my point, that you're not getting. Science is what we can observe, study, and test. Show me where it happens today.
Sure. We do see evidence for animals today, like terrestrial land animals today, evolving.
So the answer is yes, and I'm going to have Grayson's links, if I remember. I'm sure he'll remind me in the description and the pinned comment. But
yeah, my channel is called Based Theory, like based, like the opposite of cringe. If you just search on YouTube like Based Theory After Show, you should be able to find it.
Can you believe it's already been an hour?
Yeah, time flew both in this and in my debate. Like I had to basically speed up all my points at the end to try to fit them in.
And you didn't have the opening statement either. That's crazy.
For a more aquatic lifestyle. So like we've seen this in like Western Canada, where the wolves have been losing their habitat because of like deforestation and et cetera. And they've actually been having to spend more of their time swimming and hunting for prey in the water. And we've actually noticed since the 70s that they have had anatomical changes to have like, you know, more webbed feet and limb proportions that are better adapted for swimming. So we can see this transitioning happening today. And I'm not saying that in the past there was anything different going on. The changes generation to generation are about the same degree as the generational differences we see today. It's not like there's anything different going on in the past. I just saw that we only have about like 5 minutes left, and that's kind of crazy to me. That time went by so fast. I didn't even get to a lot of the points that I wanted to talk about. So that's unfortunate.
Well, I'm still stuck. You're saying wolves they're deforesting Canada, and so they have to swim more, and so they're developing web feet, turning into a duck or something. Is that your point, or what?
Turning into a duck.
Yeah, obviously that's disingenuous. I mean, he knows that's clearly not what I was saying.
What oh my God, that makes me mad. We have 103 people watching, which is awesome. And thank you, Necromantech, for joining my channel members. Thank you. That's awesome. Okay. I wonder if I wrote down the timestamp for the.
It's at around 109 minutes or 109, 30 seconds or something. That's when I start talking about
1 hour, 9 minutes.
Yeah, like that's when I start talking about like plankton specifically, because that's one of my favorite examples that I bring up in this whole debate, because Hovind's entire idea, right? If you bring up the order of the fossil record, which is impossible for a creationist to explain with the flood model, he brings up 4 things that could explain what we see. And obviously none of them do explain what we see, but the plankton is a perfect example that refutes all 4 at once. I think I go into what the 4 are, but he says, oh, like they're sorted by their body densities, or they're sorted by what habitats they live in, or they're sorted by their intelligence or mobility. And plankton literally have all the same in all of those categories, and yet they're still sorted into like layers like evolution would predict. And like he just flat out has no response to explain this.
It was, so far off the ground, only tall people could reach it. Eventually, only tall people can make babies. Then pretty soon you got an island full of tall people. You didn't create anything. You selected a slice of the already existing gene code. That's all. That's not evolution. That's natural selection. Has nothing to do with evolution. It selects. But you're wanting to say that this selection process of bigger webs on the wolf's foot or whatever can create something, and it doesn't. There's no
No,
creation.
I agree with you that natural selection only selects; it doesn't create. What creates is the mutation process. But they're just okay. I'll try to summarize. We're not going to be able to get to all my points. I'm just going to try to summarize where I was going with this. Right. So I was going to continue to describe what we see as we go down, and we get to more and more simple and more basal organisms, and we get past clams. That's what I wanted to address. Clams are not the bottom, like you claim. It goes below that, where you get to get weird organisms that don't resemble anything that lives today in the Ediacaran period, and they have strange shapes and body plans, a little bit more complicated than sponges. I mean, they're not nothing like what we see today. And then when you dig deeper than that, you find only stromatolites and other single-celled organisms and those fossils. So it goes below clams. And I don't think that there's any rational way to explain the neat ordering that we see in the fossil record. And I know that you point to habitat and different body densities and different mobility strategies and different levels of intelligence. So the example that I wanted to bring up, because you love bringing up SpongeBob so much, I wanted to bring up his arch nemesis, plankton. So we actually find plankton fossils in just about every layer, from modern layers to the Cambrian, right? These are not sorted according to, like the plankton are in all the layers. And the actual fossil plankton that we find do change based on more derived characteristics on the top and more basal characteristics on the bottom. And we see the same kind of patterns in the plankton and how they separate out against all these layers. And the cool thing about plankton is that they have the same body density as other plankton, the same amount of intelligence.
Kent is just dying for the Q&A to start. You could just tell. Oh man, I think this is by far your best debate, Grayson, against him. I would have to say, like, this is just the most complete in terms of the arguments and how not aggressive but just persistent you were. And
I mean, I would agree. It's a takedown for sure. I mean, he's not able to make a single point that I don't immediately refute. And I don't think that he was able to refute even a single point that I brought up.
Yeah. So, all the credit in the world for this one. I enjoyed, so I thought this was the third time you debated Kent, but it's just the second one.
Yep, that's correct. I wanted to do the third debate on the Big Bang, but it looks like we're probably going to be doing the age of the Earth, because I just have got to see Kent's reaction to the fact that the Earth's spin is speeding up. Like, I want to see his mind explode when I tell him that, because his whole thing, he's like, the Earth is slowing down. That's why it can't be billions of years old. And it's like, did you know that since 2016, it's been recorded that it is speeding up?
No, nobody disputes that it's slowing down, Grayson. Nobody disputes this.
Yeah, he says it's not disputed. Nobody disputes that it's slowing down. And I'm like, literally, like, Cloudflare and Facebook and Twitter are going to they're like considering adding a negative leap second very soon. And they're like, it's causing a lot of worry because they don't know how they're gonna like handle a negative leap second. It's like, it's incredible that he's just so uninformed.
Yeah. So I guess we'll finish this point about the plankton and then we'll wrap up the video. The time's gone by fast. But I'm going to be doing another stream later today on Evan's debate, which was also excellent. Did you see that one, Evan?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man. So I'm going to have Kennedy and Evan on because I think today was the only time that they could schedule it. So it's going to be a double feature today. So
and
that's going to be at 4:30.
The topic of this debate was supposed to be the fossil record and evolution.
I'll look it up.
Live in the same habitat. They have to live near the surface of the water to get to.
So the title is just, is there reasonable evidence for evolution, which is like the title of all these fucking debates.
Well, I explicitly told Donnie to change the name of the debate to like the evolution and the fossil record, and he told me that he would.
Yeah, he's very slippery and dishonest.
get sunlight, and they have the same mobility. So it wipes away all these factors that you say could be potentially causing the ordering that we observe, but we still observe that these plankton fossils are neatly ordered according to the different layers, and
See, look
only
at him
evolution can
Googling on his
explain that.
phone
And
right
I
now.
don't see how you could explain that possibly in a
Yeah.
like, just look
Yeah.
at him trying to search for plankton fossils on his phone, like on creation.com or wherever he's on. Like he's actively trying to Google anything to form a response.
Yeah, I would take that as a sign of your victory there. Definitely.
A creation model.
How many varieties of plankton are there right now?
There's a lot.
And so you're saying because they're different kinds of plankton found in different layers. My phone's not working in the metal building, right? I'd answered the question for myself. So therefore, because we see these
of the
variations
metal
in
building.
plankton,
I mean, that's
He thinks that phones don't work because buildings have metal in them.
yeah. I mean, maybe it has something to do with him being in bumfuck backwoods Alabama that he's not getting cell service. But I mean, this should not be allowed. Donnie should not be allowing this. I mean, personally, I don't see a problem with it. I think that people should be able to Google stuff during debates. I don't see a big deal with it. I don't like when Kent is getting answers from other people because that seems like, you know, it should just be the debate participants. But like, if you don't know a term and like you want to look up a definition on Google or something, I don't really see a problem with it. But
to use Kent's own words, I don't even care what kind of advantages Kent have. Kent has access to Google. He can have 50 people in the room. And to quote Kent, I'll still debate him with half my brain tied behind my back.
Yeah, I mean, I would actually prefer that he is attempting to bring up some type of new argument rather than just repeat, we've observed dogs produce dogs. Like, I'd like to hear something new from Google at least, so I don't even mind. But it's just funny.
Could it be that a global flood with the tide going up and down would deposit one colony of plankton at one time, and 3 weeks later, another colony that happens to be moved into the area for different conditions, water temperature, salinity, whatever? I'll do some research on plankton. I can't get Google to work at all. But that's not evidence that we came from an amoeba and that.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I think that might be a good note to go out on. I mean,
yeah, we all know full well that he's not going to be doing any research on plankton. I guess maybe we don't have time to get to this, but my next argument in the debate was about Tiktaalik.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's one of my favorite predictions of evolution, and I take it through the whole thing, and I ask Kent, like, how can this possibly be true that evolution predicted exactly what type of mosaic fossil they would find and exactly where they would find it, and they went and they found exactly what they were looking for and exactly where they predicted to find it. Like, how can that be true? How is that, like, is that a big coincidence? And his only response was to ask me about octopus. Like, it was great. I mean, if we could get like his response, like, and when he brought up octopus, like, that was so funny to me. Like, that was just like, it was a few minutes after this plankton discussion, and I walked through. I mean, I'm sure the audience is familiar with Tiktaalik. We don't have to listen to my whole spiel about it. I want to hear his response with him bringing up octopus. It's probably around like a minute and 18 or like an hour and 18 or an hour and 19 minutes, somewhere around there.
I know exactly where it is.
Because that was one of my favorite moments from him in the debate, was because like the prediction of Tiktaalik like is such strong evidence that like it's a predictive model, like, and the prediction is confirmed in the discovery of Tiktaalik, and he has no response, and he literally just changes the subject to ask me about octopus.
Are unique, and where does the octopus fit into here? I'll be doing tomorrow night. Isn't part of a whole population that now went.
It's because he did a making babies on octopus. That's why.
within the Devonian period. And we know what layers are associated with the Devonian period. So the scientists went and did a survey and figured out that those layers are very near the surface in a very far northern island in Canada, right? So they knew where to look. They knew what they wanted to find. So they went there, and in 2004, they found exactly what evolution predicted: a lobed finned fish with wrist bones, lungs, and a neck. Okay, how many fishes have necks or wrists? It was a mosaic fossil that could breathe air and walk on land, but still had fins and other features of fish. Tiktaalik. It doesn't matter whether these specimens had children or not, or what their parents looked like. Scientists used the theory of evolution to predict exactly what type of mosaic fossil we should find, and they predicted exactly where to find it, and the proof was there to confirm evolution. So the fossil exists, and thus evolution's prediction was validated.
Let me unmute Kent. Kent, go ahead with your response. And I think, gentlemen, we'll have to make this the final topic for tonight in order for us to get to some audience questions. So I appreciate that, Grayson.
If we go back like a few seconds, it doesn't even look like Kent is trying to say anything. Like Donnie has to come in and save him and say, "Oh, Kent, you're on mute. Let me take you off mute." But I was looking at his mouth, and it didn't look like he was responding at all. He was just silent and dumbfounded.
Yeah, did you see him check his watch too? Okay.
Tiktaalik. It doesn't matter whether these specimens had children or not,
I like
what their
preempted
parents
his
looked
argument
like.
there too.
Scientists used the theory of evolution to predict exactly what type of mosaic fossil we should find, and they predicted exactly where to find it, and the proof was there to confirm evolution. So the fossil exists, and thus evolution's prediction was validated.
Let me unmute Kent. Kent, go ahead with your response. And I think, gentlemen, we'll have to make this the final topic for tonight in order for us to get to some audience questions. So
Wow.
Like he literally was not even trying to offer any response.
Well, you know what? We might as well play my question as well, right? And then that'll be it. I think that's only fair, because I was very happy with this question. Man, what a brutal debate for Kent. Seriously, you really took it to him.
Nothing will convince them otherwise.
That
Still slavery.
I'm surprised he didn't get more mad. I guess it's because you were just
will convince them otherwise.
Cordial.
So catching a dinosaur and putting it in the zoo would not change their religion. They are determined to stick with their religion.
I was actually really surprised that because Kent did not upload our previous debate onto his channel. So I thought that, this one was much worse for him than that last one. In the last one, he was allowed to talk for like 10 minutes at a time and, make all his silly little points. But in this debate, I so completely shut down all of his arguments that I was shocked that he actually did upload this debate onto his channel.
Oh, maybe we're wrong. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Kent. Grayson, final word?
Yeah, so I think that most people would find it a very silly thing to say that there are dinosaurs that are still alive out there, like the Loch Ness Monster, or somewhere in Central Africa, you're going to find a T-Rex or something. But I think that's a little bit ridiculous. I mean, they're very large. We would know if they were existing. But if we did happen to find one, that would just be another example like the coelacanth, or, the tadpole shrimp, or these other animals that we already talked about. So I would agree with what Kent's saying, that would not disprove evolution if we found a dinosaur alive today. But I think it's a very silly thing to think that we would find such a thing.
Okay, thank you. Grayson, on to the next question. Kent, one of your best friends here, has a question for you coming in from Atheist Junior. And so the question is, Kent, why do you say the words favored races in the title of, I guess this has to do with Darwin's book, Origin of Species? He says means black or white human races when it actually means extant species. Do you have any thoughts on that, Kent?
Well, yes, on my video number 5, I cover this in great detail. Darwin was, during the time frame of great racism in the world, when there was a lot of teaching that black people are inferior to white people. That was what the teaching was. There was still slavery in America at the time, 1859 when he wrote his book. We had our Civil War right after that. But I think that Darwin did mean various other species of creatures as well as humans. Many people during that time frame thought that the different skin colors indicated a totally different species of human, and they had mankind divided up. So I think Atheist Junior, who loves atheism because it gives him an excuse for all kinds of things that go against God's word, it's the title of the book was "The Origin of Species by Means."
Got to get that subtle homophobia in there, things that go against God's word, my lifestyle. Oh, it goes against your lifestyle. That's code word for being not straight, basically. Ken does that every time I ask a question. He's got to do the gay bashing. Doesn't bother me.
Of natural selection or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. So if I watch my video number 5 where I talk about this in great detail and show lots of slides. It take me a minute to get it up here, but I think he's grasping at straws here, desperate.
It'd take me a minute to get it up here. I just think that's so funny. I'm sorry, I just had to.
Desperately grasping at straws, Atheist Junior is. By the way, Atheist Junior, open challenge right here. This program, Donnie, would you schedule a debate for me and Atheist Junior again?
Let's do it. January 2023 or sometime in 2023. Round 3.
Anytime. Anytime, AJ.
Okay. And I think it'd be fun. We could even do a similar format to tonight.
Yeah. I'm not going to do that. Just the fact that Kent wants me to debate him makes me not want to do it. I'd much rather just play the role of coaching other people. I'm happy to do, to do this and to put videos like this on my channel where people can watch these debates and not be giving Standing for Truth the watch time and the engagement and stuff. And plus I get to have guests on like you who might not have a channel or who have a smaller channel who are just getting started. And, I'm more than happy to help use my influence to signal boost some smaller creators or people who like Horazio who doesn't have a channel. Because, like I said, it's good to have as many voices speaking up against this type of misinformation as we can, because when people believe these type of young earth creationist beliefs, it can seem harmless, but then, it very often leads to people also denying stuff like vaccines or denying health care to their children and praying instead. And it's just bad stuff. So, these debates are mostly just entertainment, but if, I can help out in any way to fight back against some of this nonsense and just dunk on Kent, then I'm happy to do it,
Yeah, I will say that I am not as wise and mature as you are, and I will probably end up, unfortunately, doing a third debate with Kent at some point in the future. It's not scheduled or anything at the moment, but I'm probably, after utterly demolishing him on evolution in the first 2 debates, I just want to move on to his stupid points about the age of the Earth and maybe the Big Bang or something. But I think I've pretty much, the first 2 debates, I've said all I need to say to prove evolution. The first one I used genetics. The second one I used the fossil record. And he really had no responses. So I think I'm done debating him on that. And then, I really appreciate everything that you've done to help promote the debates and my channel, as I've, I just kind of started it last week and I'm trying to keep growing. So at the moment, all I have are the live streams that I've done, but I do plan on posting video content and debate content of my own in the future. I want to do an abiogenesis debate soon on the channel. And I do have some debates coming up soon, like on January 9th. I'll be doing another debate on Standing for Truth's channel, and I want to re-upload the debates onto my own channel as well. to get some of the view time there. But the next debate on January 9th that people can look out for is going to be on the topic of the Big Bang to evolution and everything in between. And it's going to cover a lot of ground. We're going to be talking about cosmology, stellar evolution, abiogenesis, evolution, the whole shebang. So, yeah, I would just, if people are interested in that kind of content, I'd hope that they would consider subscribing, because I want to continue building from here and uploading more content like that onto my channel in the future. So, based theory.
Hell yeah. Do you know what the origin of the word based is?
I know it's the opposite of cringe. I just know the I don't know the etymology of the word though.
So there was this rapper, well, I guess he's still active, named Lil B, from the Bay Area, and his Twitter handle is Lil B the Bass God, and he was like, before Soulja Boy, he was like the first meme rapper.
I am familiar with the based God. I didn't know that
so
was
people
the
would say
origin,
thank you, Bass God, but the actual origin of that word came from when people used to call him based, because based meant you're smoking freebase, like freebase cocaine. Like, and he decided, like, I'm gonna co-opt this, I'm gonna reclaim this word and turn it into something positive rather than like an insult. So instead of it being like you're like fucked up, it's like I'm based. And then it's kind of annoying that like a lot of conservative, like right-wing people have co-opted it now, and it's like I feel like they definitely don't understand like the origin. They have no fucking idea who Lil B is. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that.
Yeah, I do hope that people don't confuse my my channel title as somehow implying conservative leanings.
I don't think they will.
It originated just on like the pun for critical race theory as critical based theory. And then I just shortened it to based theory. But yeah, I mean, that's where it really came from for me, was just the pun value and the fact that I like talking about these scientific theories. So like Big Bang theory, evolution theory, like, based theory.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on, Grayson. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me. So thank you.
All right. Well, I will just see you guys in the next video, and I'll be streaming later today in about 2 hours at 4:30 with Kennedy and Evan. We'll be watching that debate also. So I'll be back, and hope you guys enjoy.
Thanks.